Welcome to another episode of the Be Wise podcast. I am your host, Chris Y. Wright. Today, we're going to be discussing what's called in the military strategic world as the pincer movement. And what the pincer movement is, if you don't know, that's like when the opposition comes in from both sides and they kind of trap you and you have nowhere to go. And we're going to break that down a little bit because that's what's happening to the Trump administration. They're getting it from the left, they're getting it from the right, and it kind of sucks, you know. But before we get into this, make sure you like and subscribe, please, please, please. Trying to grow the channel. If you like me, then I'm sure your friends and colleagues will like you as well. And I would just love to talk to you on a daily basis. So on one side, you have House Majority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats, and they're labeling the strikes as an illegal war, you know, invoking the War Powers Act, and according to critics, rooting for a military failure, you know, to secure some type of political win. And on the other side, you got Marco Rubio, and he's like leading the charge for the establishment, arguing that the strikes were surgical, legal, and definitely necessary. And we're going to take a look at some videos on that. But the real story is the civil war on the right. So we're going to take a deep dive into why populist heavyweights like Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens are all sounding the alarm, and why radicals like Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes believe Trump has been captured by the neocons. Take a look at this video here, and it just, this kind of stuff just drives me crazy because I'm like, what are you guys doing? You're killing us.
Look, there are massive divisions over what we've done here, and people are going to change their minds over the coming days and weeks, one way or the other. But my own feeling is no one should have to die for a foreign country. I don't think those 4 service members died for the United States. I think they died for Iran or for Israel. I think I understand how this helps Iran perfectly well. I get it. I mean, I hope. Long term, we'll see. But they seem rather jubilant. 80% of the country does not support the Ayatollah. He was a terrible, terrible man. No one's crying that he's dead. No normal person. But our government's job is not to look out for Iran or for Israel. It's to look out for us. And this feels very much to me like it is clearly Israel's war. Mark Levin wanted it. It's his war. Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, Miriam Adelson. That's obvious. They're the ones who've been pushing us into this.
Megyn, what are you doing? Isn't there Sebastian Maniscalco go, what are you doing? Like, you are just giving ammunition to the Dems. You are like giving ammunition to liberals. This is, regardless of whose war you call it, our men, our servicemen and women are over there fighting. Are you telling them that they're over there for naught? Like, you're telling them that you're putting your life in the line for nothing? You might as well say, don't go. You might as well just tell them, don't follow an order because this is not our war. That's just a bad message. I don't like it. That's not the way you support our troops. That is not the way you do it. And then, you know, you have Tucker Carlson. He's doing the same.
The United States committed troops to this conflict because the Prime Minister of Israel demanded it. 7 trips to the White House over the last year. And the point of those trips never varied. The United States needs to commit to regime change in Iran. It wasn't that we thought Iran was going to get nukes this week, and that's why we did this. Nobody's even saying that now. And actually, if you look at it backwards and try to assess recent events over the past several years, certainly over the past 6 or 8 months, you can see that a lot of what was happening here was preparation for where we are right now. In other words, people who wanted war in Iran were softening up the public for it, were manipulating the U.S. government in order to affect it, and were doing their very best to silence anyone who doubted its wisdom. A lot of the things we have seen in the recent past, they were all designed to get us to where we are now, war with Iran on behalf of Israel.
So there are some factions, there's some people in this world that believe this. You have your disagreements behind closed doors, But then we all go out with a unified front. Like we go out there and go, what's our message? Conservatives have always been, complimented for having a good message. The message that we present to the public is shouted unified front. We're together on this. But when you have people like Megyn coming out and saying this is Israel's war, it's a senseless war, and we're sending our servicemen and women into combat for nothing, for Israel, it's not a good message. Tucker, you're a smart guy. And it makes me think that this has become about clicks and views because you're not thinking like you thought back when you were on network television, when you were being paid by Fox. You were on message, and now you're no longer on message. And listen, I'm America First just as much as anybody, but is this the end of the America First coalition? Like, if the base walks away, does the GOP even exist anymore? Because you got guys like Hakeem Jeffries saying it's an illegal war and it's going to fail. And although Tucker, Candace, Megyn, although your message is different, you might as well just align yourself with Hakeem Jeffries. You might as well.
Well, the administration has failed to provide any justification for these preemptive strikes. And so we'll continue to look for information that they owe the American people to suggest that there was intelligence indicating that Iran was prepared to strike the United States. Nothing has been presented to justify what's taken place up until this point, and the administration has an obligation to be able to prove that.
Officials on Saturday said that there was intelligence that Iran could be preparing for a possible preemptive strike. That was contradicted on Sunday by other intelligence, as reported to our sources. What you are saying is you have heard no reason for why Donald Trump ordered this strike now versus 6 months from now.
There's no indication that Iran had reconstituted its nuclear program. There's no indication that Iran was prepared to strike the United States preemptively or to strike any of our interests in the region. And there certainly is no justification for a regime change war. The American people want us to focus on making their life better, making their life more affordable, not getting involved in another endless war in the Middle East that is going to end in failure.
So we're sending our men and women abroad to fight in a war that you, Hakeem Jeffries, a politician, telling them that you are entering a war that's going to end in failure. See, this is what the problem is. There was a time that regardless of what people thought, we wanted to support our troops. That was the primary message. And now we're sending our young men and women into war and telling them, go ahead, but this is a stupid war. Remember, we forget what happened after Vietnam when our soldiers came home and was met with protest and spit on and shouted at. I think we learned from that, but it seems like maybe we haven't. Hakeem thinks this is an illegal war. Regardless of what you think, we got to support our troops. But Rubio said that the war is not illegal. He says that we're following all the rules.
What do you make of the war powers resolution that's being considered here in Congress?
I mean, Congress votes on those. They can if they want. There's mechanisms for it. We've complied with the War Powers Act, even though we believe it's unconstitutional, as has every other administration. Every other president has found the War Powers Act to be unconstitutional. Nonetheless, we notified Gang of Eight, which is an appropriate mechanism by which to notify Congress. We sent the notification within 48 hours, the way the law requires. I'm here today to have, my 6th or 7th briefing before the entirety of the House and Senate, which is far more than I ever got from any administration in the time that I was here, certainly when I was a member of the Gang of Eight. And so we've over-complied with the law and what it requires. This is an action by the president to address a real threat a real threat. This is hostilities designed to eliminate a threat to the safety and the security of the United States and to our allies.
So he said, we're following all the rules. We're giving notice. He goes, all day, all night, all week, I've been doing what we're supposed to do. But, you got this populist mutiny going on. Like I said, Tucker, Megyn, Candace, and they're not the only ones. Those are just the big names because they have, on all of their platforms, they probably got combined 25 million followers or subscribers, and they're trying to steer the MAGA base away from the war. But while they're doing that, they're sending a very, very dangerous message. And that's what concerns me,
In that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it. And we also are completely done with the idea that, with this decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but enough of that. I don't even want to put the message out on my video because I don't want you to hear that kind of madness when we have soldiers and servicemen and women, young, from 20 years old, 18 years old, thinking they're going to a senseless war. There are some redeeming qualities in the war. Do I want the war in Iran? I'll tell you no. But do I know there are redeeming qualities and benefits to going to war? Absolutely. We can definitely stop Iran from building a nuke. We also can help our ally in Israel because if we don't go in, Israel's going in. They were going to go in anyway. And we would have been right there to back them up. Then we got all this interest in the Middle East. When bombs started flying, do not forget that we have bases over there. We have ships over there. We have soldiers, men and women over there. So if Israel had dropped the first bomb and they start attacking our bases and our soldiers and service members, we would have been in the war anyway. You do understand that, right? But because we have this severed relationship within the GOP, this conflict could literally be the final nail in the party's coffin. The temperature in the Middle East, it didn't just rise. It hit a boiling point. The president has authorized a series of strikes inside of Iran. We've hit ships, we've hit bases, we've hit their missile, the launch pads, and Washington is tearing itself apart over whether this is a masterstroke of, deterrence or a fast track to a forever war. And let's be real, tearing itself apart is a polite way to put it. We've moved past policy. We've moved past policy debates. We're now at a point where Democrats are calling the whole operation an illegal war, like I just said, while the GOP is circling the wagons. And it's a high-stakes game of chicken, where some are actually wondering, is the opposition actually rooting for the mission to fail? Hakeem Jeffries calling this an illegal war, that's just the beginning. It's going to get worse. The midterms are coming up. And you know what happens if the Dems win the midterms? They're going to want to impeach Trump again over this war. Like I said, they're leaning heavily on the War Powers Act, arguing that, Donald Trump bypassed Congress and just dragging the U.S. into a conflict without formal declaration. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, to the Dems, this isn't a defensive or, type of situation. It's provocative. You've got the more progressive wing essentially saying, we told you so. They're framing this as a rogue, executive action. The rhetoric is it's intense. And they're not just saying that the strikes were a mistake. They're saying that it's a crime. See, they always want to bring up crime so they can indict the president if they win in the midterms. And that's where Hakeem Jeffries saying things like, sounds like he's rooting for failure. That's where that narrative comes in. Critics of the Democrats and, even more moderate pundits are pointing out that if you call the war illegal and a disaster from day one, you're politically invested in it being exactly that. If Trump succeeds now in neutralizing the threat, without a full-scale invasion, the illegal war talking point loses its teeth. And luckily, we got Marco Rubio out there, who I love. He's been the tip of the spear. He's been on all the Sunday shows. He's been on X. He's got TikTok videos floating on around, Forbes, CNN. He's making the rounds defending the president's actions. He's the chief defender. And Marco Rubio's line is very clear. Everything was done correctly. He's arguing that the intelligence was actionable. The strikes were precise. And more importantly, the president has Article 2 authority to protect American interests and troops abroad. So, this is really important stuff. It sounds trivial, but this is very, very important. Marco said,
Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent? There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
And that's why we call it the Department of War and not the Department of Defense. Defense means you're sitting back waiting to take a hit, and you're going to defend yourself. The Department of War says, we go at them. We take it to the House. So that's Marco Rubio telling the Dems, get real. And he's framed it as, would you rather have a legal debate while Iran moves on our assets over in the Middle East and in Europe, or would you rather have a president who actually does something? It's the classic hawk versus dove standoff, but with the 2026 level of polarization, of course. Now, Hakeem Jeffries is in a tough spot here. On one hand, he has to hold the line for the Dems, for the base that is fiercely anti-interventionalist. But on the other, he's being accused of rooting for national security failure, just to score points against Trump, just to score points against the GOP, and to boost up their chances in the midterms, and of course the presidency. It's a dangerous look, Hakeem. But if the strikes do lead to de-escalation, Jeffrey looks like the boy who cried wolf. He's the boy who cried World War III. But if things go south, if there's a major Iranian retaliation, Jeffries and the Dems can say they were the only ones trying to stop the madness. It's a political gamble. And Hakeem Jeffries has been very vocal that this quote unquote recklessness will be the administration's undoing. But undoing in a military sense usually means American lives are at risk. And that's what a lot of people are looking at, which is why the GOP is hitting them so hard, on rooting for failure. Hakeem, don't root for failure. At the end of the day, we're watching two different versions of reality. That's important. One where this is necessary, a necessary show of strength, and the other where it's an illegal reach for power. Donald Trump always said he didn't want more wars. his hand was played, but like I said, we would have had to do this eventually anyway. The only thing that we know for sure is that the drones are in the air and the lawyers are in the well. We'll be tracking the fallout, for the next unforeseen coming weeks, months. But other than that, let's make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button and ask yourself, is this a legal defense of U.S. interests, or does Congress have the right to push back? Put your notes in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. You guys take care.